Welcome back to the channel, guys. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button and make sure you guys like the video as well. We're reacting to some of the most watched TikToks talking about true crime. So let's jump straight in.
Katherine Knight's crimes will keep you awake for days. Psychopaths are a very rare part of the population, but female psychopaths are even more incredibly rare. But Katherine Knight was indeed a female psychopath. When she was a child, Katherine Knight lived in a house where she witnessed sexual and physical violence on a daily basis. As a result, Katherine was a very disturbed child, she was a school bully, and she had a morbid fascination with death. So much so that she actually dreamed about and longed for the day that she could work at the local slaughterhouse in her Australian hometown. And sure enough, when she became an adult, she did get employed by this slaughterhouse and took on the role of skinning the cows and pulling out their internal organs and separating the flesh from the bones. This job allowed her to get her very own set of knives, which she treasured like friends. It's actually said that she hung these knives over her bed at night when she slept, just in case she needed them. Now, even as a very disturbed adult, Katherine managed to get boyfriends and even convince a man to marry her. As a matter of fact, she tried to kill her first husband, David Kellett, on their wedding night because they had only made love twice. And that was the beginning of a very violent and bumpy marriage. Now, there was one night where David had come home late. He had gotten caught up playing darts at the bar, and when he walked in his front door, he was greeted by a skillet to the skull. Miraculously, David survived this, but this was one of many incidences that nearly cost David his life before he divorced Katherine. Now, fast forward several years and several boyfriends later, Katherine meets a man named John Price. Katherine was always able to find these guys that were willing to stick with her despite how crazy she was, because apparently she was fantastic in the bedroom. But after a while in this relationship with Katherine, John became seriously concerned for his life. He had even started telling friends, family, co-workers, if I go missing, Katherine killed me. But sadly, they didn't take him seriously until it was too late. On February 29th, 2000, Katherine took the butcher knife that she always kept hanging over her bed, and she stabbed John 37 times. When John succumbed to his wounds, Katherine dragged his body downstairs and skinned him. One detective said that the skin looked like a wetsuit. It was hanging from a meat hook in the living room, and it took them a while to figure out what it was. She had also decapitated John and cooked parts of his body with zucchini, pumpkin, squash, cabbage, and had planned to eat him. She had also made 2 plates to serve to his children. Luckily, police arrived on the scene and stopped her before she could serve dinner.
Imagine being murdered because your boyfriend's mother wants to keep your baby. Huge trigger warning before we proceed with this video. It is very gruesome and violent and difficult to hear. This was 24-year-old Vera Jo Regal. Although Vera was 24, she had the mentality of an 8 to 12-year-old girl. She had a very troubled childhood, and she endured a bunch of SA from not only her father, but her mother's boyfriend as well. This obviously created issues with her and her mother, and she never felt safe at home. When Vera was 19 years old, she met a 13-year-old boy named Zachary Brooks. Zachary's mother, Sherry Lynn Brooks, offered Vera to come live with them in their home.
She looks scary.
Vera was thrilled and ecstatic to be able to move in with her boyfriend and his family and couldn't wait. But Sherry's reasonings were a lot more sinister than she made it seem like. Sherry was a mother of 9 children, but 5 of those children were removed from her care because of her neglect and SA towards her children. Sherry's family was known a lot in that area for being involved in many crimes. She was even compared to Charles Manson. Sherry, of course, being the ringleader, aka Sugar Babe. Sherry was wheelchair bound. She couldn't have children, and her children were being removed left and right. So, with the children she still had, she would utilize their girlfriends to convince them to get pregnant so she could have those babies. And that is exactly what she did with Vera.
Oh my God.
Vera got pregnant by Zachary, and from the second she announced she was pregnant, Zachary gave the rights to that baby to Sherry. Vera was mistreated like crazy in this home. She was used to do all the chores, rub Sherry's feet, was made to sleep in a closet with pet pigs. The whole home was just disgusting. And Vera was constantly beaten by family members, with, of course, Sherry in the background egging it on. Sherry even cashed all of Vera's disabilities checks to keep the money for herself. While pregnant, Vera was even forced to drink 3 full bottles of castor oil by Sherry because she needed the baby to be born on her birthday. The baby was born 1 month earlier than it should have been and was born with health issues because of that. From the second the baby was born, it was very clear to Vera that Zachary wanted nothing to do with her. And Vera really wanted to be around her baby, but Sherry made this impossible, punishing her even if she got close or even tried to talk to the baby. Finally, Sherry decided that it was best to get rid of Vera altogether in order to make sure she could keep her baby. And this is where Nicole and Danny come in, related to Sherry. There's a lot more details to this case and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to post part 2. Part 2 of the Sugar Babe murders. Huge trigger warning before we proceed. After nightfall on March 26, 2011, Nicole, Danny, and Zachary took 24-year-old Vera to the railroads near the family's home, and they stabbed Vera 21 times. Her throat was lashed from ear to ear, and every bone in her face was broken. She was then left nude on top of the train tracks in order for them to wait for the 2 a.m. train to come and get rid of the evidence, as instructed to them according to them by Sherry, aka Sugar Babe. What these people didn't account for was the fact that Vera was incredibly strong. She used every last bit of her strength to move herself from the danger zone of the rails. Unfortunately though, she did end up passing away. But what didn't happen was the fact that the train didn't go over her. Therefore, none of the evidence was destroyed. As soon as authorities found out who the victim was, they immediately went to the Brooks home. Everyone was questioned, but Sherry was allowed to be present for all of it. It was very clear that everyone was terrified of Sherry. At first, Sherry claimed that it was someone else, another one of Vera's boyfriends who must have done it. But the only boyfriend Vera had was her son, Zachary. Not to mention that there was a lot of evidence authorities found inside of the home that linked them to the murder. Eventually, Nicole and Danny went ahead and admitted to the crimes. They took plea deals and Danny was sentenced to 40 years in prison, and Nicole received 23 years for conspiracy charge. Zachary at the top, who was Vera's boyfriend and the father of their child, was sentenced to 4 years for obstruction of justice. As for Sherry, she was also charged for obstruction and was charged to only 40 months in prison. And to my understanding from the articles I've read, she is now free. Vera did not deserve this kind of life. I'm very sorry for what you went through. I hope you're resting in peace. If y'all are at all confused as to any parts of this case, go ahead and check out part 1. It's the very last video I posted before this one. This case is truly devastating. Nobody deserves this. As for the baby was removed from Brooks' home and set up for adoption. Apparently, according to records, Sherry threw a huge fit about this as well. As always, guys, please remember to stay respectful in my comment section. These are real cases, real people, real crimes.
Okay, this appears to be one of the weirdest true crime stories in history. And it's one that totally flew under the radar, at least in the United States, because of when it happened and where it happened. Back in early 2017, 2 separate women in 2 separate countries were both approached by men saying they wanted to film a series of prank videos for YouTube. One was from Vietnam, one was from Indonesia. They were paid a small amount of money for this, although it wasn't a small amount of money to them. The prank was that they would run up to strangers in public places and smear some sort of lotion or baby oil or something on their faces, and then apologize and run away, or kiss them on the cheek and run away, and that was the prank. And they did this over and over and over again, getting specific direction from the guys who hired them on how to dress, on exactly where to smear the cream, that kind of thing. They did it, they got paid, everything seemed fine. They assumed these videos were going up somewhere. In February of 2017, each of the women were told, hey, we're going to bring in a partner, the 2 of you are going to work together on this one. It's at Kuala Lumpur Airport in Malaysia. They were told exactly how to dress. One of them was told to wear a white t-shirt with the letters LOL on it. You know, like maybe that was branding for the prank channel or something. They were shown the target, they ran up, they smeared the stuff on his face, and then he died. This time, the baby oil had been replaced by the deadly nerve agent VX. The prank victim was Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. The 2 women were apparently unknowingly carrying out an assassination on behalf of the regime. See, Kim Jong-nam had been working with the CIA, apparently, and had been exiled from North Korea since 2003. They had apparently
Oh
tried
my
to take him out
God.
multiple times and finally succeeded by convincing 2 young women they were acting in a prank YouTube video.
This woman gave birth to 5 separate
Wow.
babies in her bathtub at home and hid them in her closet. In 2010, a young woman opened her mother's closet
What
and
was that?
discovered what she believed to be human remains. She immediately called the police. When the police arrived, they did not believe that these remains were human and that she was free to throw them out. But the next day, the young woman called the police again and said she had found additional items. So once again, the police came back and they determined that these remains were in fact human. They were found concealed in coolers, and
Oh
one set
my
of remains was
God.
found encased in cement. This young woman's mother, Michelle Kalina, was immediately charged with abuse of a corpse. Soon investigators discovered that Michelle had actually hid 6 pregnancies from her longtime boyfriend and her husband. Just a trigger warning here,
Hid?
it gets pretty graphic. Soon investigators discovered that Michelle had actually been hiding 6 different pregnancies from her husband and her longtime boyfriend that she had been having an affair with. It was believed that out of the 5 bodies found, at least 4 of them were born alive. Her longtime boyfriend was the father of 3 of the babies, possibly 4, but the results for the 5th came back inconclusive. Investigators determined that the babies had either died from asphyxia, poisoning, or neglect, and her charges were immediately raised to murder. Michelle and her husband
Dear
Jeffrey had
God.
already had 2 kids of their own, a 19-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son who had cerebral palsy and unfortunately died back in 2000. Michelle had also given birth to a 3rd child in 2003, and the baby girl was a product of Michelle and the man she had been having a long-standing affair with, but she had given this child up for adoption. According to Jeffrey, he had suspected that his wife had been pregnant at least once. Investigators believe that the only reason for these murders was so that Michelle could hide the affair from her husband. Michelle later admitted that
Oh
she had
my
been an
God.
alcoholic for years and often suffered blackouts. This goes into her defense. In December of 2010, Michelle pled not guilty, and then she negotiated a plea. But while that plea was being figured out, it was postponed because the judge ordered that she undergo psychiatric testing to ensure that she was competent to stand trial. In August of 2011,
Wow.
it was determined that Michelle was completely competent. During the trial, it was revealed that Michelle told a psychiatrist that after she gave birth to the child, she would wrap them in a towel and place them in either a bin or some kind of container and put them in the closet. Her defense lawyer actually asked for leniency on the grounds that
Oh my
Michelle
God.
learned to deny reality as a victim of childhood SA and that she had put memories of the babies in a psychological closet. But the judge did not buy this. Michelle testified and said a load of stuff to paint herself as a victim and not the babies, so I won't even give that the time of day. Her husband Jeffrey, the judge, that he would have helped raise the babies even though they were the product of an affair. And finally, on August 4th, 2011, Michelle Kalina was found guilty and was sentenced to the maximum 20 to 40 years in prison.
Yeah. Oh my God. Every time I'm watching these videos, how do people do this stuff? How can you do this kind of stuff? Well, until the next one, guys, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you like watching these videos with me, and I'll see you guys very soon.